Hey, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan, and I'm here with Jack Pine from High Redbird. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
Oh God, it's hot. Um, I I can't even pretend to lead with anything else. It is. Um, I understand that it is hot for everyone, um, but not for you. Okay, then everybody on the live stream will just have to hate you, and you can feel the warmth of their rage because yeah, no, we in Houston, it has been incredibly hot. It has been incredibly humid. And we have had like a daily thunderstorm. So that's amping up the humidity. And I know I really shouldn't complain about that because a lot of people have droughts and other things. But I am at the point, if you would like some of our rain, you can have it. In fact, if you drive down to get it, I will load it into your car for you. Like I will find a giant decorative fan and I will waft a cloud into your trunk. Please come and get it.
So, okay, Jack, we do this every Friday night, and everybody's kind of like, they've come to know us pretty well. But I think you're pushing it, trying to say you can control the weather. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that
Okay,
later.
I'll try.
We're talking about myths tonight, so that might be a good topic that Jack can make the weather happen. I don't know. So, as always, I'm going to ask you, Jack, do you have any introductions that you need to do?
So a couple reminders for everybody. Now, don't forget, we do our Friday Night Flock Talks every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the Leather Elves page on Facebook, you will get a notification whenever we go live. So that way you don't miss out on any of these fun sessions. You'll also get all that fun information from the Leather Elves on any sales that they have, any specials that they are running, any cool ideas for toys. They do post a lot of really fun stuff over there. They have a coupon code that's actually available. You guys can
We
see that
do.
on your screen right now. Because
Got
we do,
a week.
it's a week
There's
left.
about a week left, so it's till July the 4th. So
Okay.
um,
Um, so you can watch the live stream on the Leather Elves Facebook page, but you can also watch it on the High Redbird YouTube channel. In fact, all of our previous live streams have been compiled into a playlist. So you can go back and watch all of them. And then there's a bunch of other really fun videos as well. So one video I put out just this week is making ice pops for your parrots because it's hot for them too. So that's a really great way to encourage foraging, but to encourage your animals to stay cool and hydrated. So, we're constantly working to find new ways to get information to you guys. Another thing you can do, if you haven't already, you can like both the Leather Elves and High Redbird on Instagram because we post and share a bunch of different things. You'll get your notification about what the live stream topic will be on Instagram. There's just so much information, birds playing with toys, baby animals, a lot of fun things you guys don't want to miss out on.
so there's a lot of stuff. I mean, and Jack and I really are trying to get the information to you guys as quickly or as in so many different ways, so that you have different options on how you get that information. But tonight, another thing we need to mention too is the AFA conference is coming up in August, and Jack and I are going to be there. And I know a number of you are as well. You can still register at afabirds.org. And Jack and I are going to do a live stream, like an in-person live stream. We're kind of excited. For Diane, I just went to Trader Joe's yesterday, so there may be cookie butter involved. So I'm just saying, that makes it worth going. So yeah, that's coming up in August. So if you need to register for that, please do. And I believe they are doing a hybrid version. So if you can't make it to Minneapolis and Minnesota, then, and all my Minnesota people are now going to give me grief. Hopefully, Lori hasn't signed on yet, but so the AFA conference is coming up. So when we talked to you guys about what we wanted to do for some topics, or what you'd like to see us do, one of the things that came up was common parrot myths. And there are just so many out there. And as Jack and I were, kind of creating what we were going to talk about this week, we realized that there are probably more than we can do in one session. So we might do this one again. We'll see how it goes tonight. But so how do myths happen? How do they get perpetuated? I can think of, so online, there are those keyboard warriors that get out there and they, with feeling and gusto and capital letters, say things, and then people pick up on it and it just keeps going. I mean, where do they get started? What do you think, Jack?
So, yeah, especially when you throw in quarantine, everybody's been stuck at home. Everybody has been interacting virtually. Um, there's a concept in zookeeping called fence talking, where you when you start with new animals, you keep them separated. You have a physical barrier between them, so they can get used to each other, so they can talk to each other and interact, but in a safe way. At a certain point, though, you're going to start seeing greater shows of aggression, and they're going to be puffed up and full of themselves and think that they can do so many things because they aren't directly interacting with each other. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of that online now. There's a lot of people that are very sure of themselves. They'll go and give their opinion on every single bird matter. And sometimes these are people that have never had a bird, or have, they've had a bird for 2 weeks. So you definitely need to take that into consideration. You need to take your sources into consideration, because there is just a lot of information out there. So being able to sort through it is a skill to develop.
And I think another thing, Jack, is the way care of our animals has evolved over the years. And there are some people, and they were and are the foundation of the avian community or the animal, care community. And it was done in a certain way. And so some people learned, this is the way to do it. And we've really evolved from there. So people are, it may be old information. It may be, but that's the way, I was always taught that's how you do it. And so that's how those things continue. It's how the myth hangs out there and is just, well, that's how we used to do it. Well, that's great, but we've kind of moved on from there. Not to say that it wasn't amazing information, and there are people who have been doing this for many, many years and their information is still very valid. But there are also people that didn't really keep up. And so, I mean, I think that's another way.
Yeah, I would say that standard of care for all of our animals has evolved tremendously. And I mean, if you want to think about it, 100 years ago, the standard practice for zoos to feed their large pythons was to use a sausage stuffer. That is not that long ago for something that we would say is so completely ridiculous today. The more we your fun calendar with the
So if you guys can see that, the bird is chained to the perch. It's 1963. So we're not talking that long ago that was, yeah, that's what goes on. Yeah, that's okay. It's all right. And that was never okay. But we've come so far, and in all different part of the animal field. I mean, think about what a zoo was like. Maybe not you, Jack, because you're so young. But when I was a kid, zoos were very, very different than they are now. And but nobody's out there going, well, it's supposed to be the way it was. It's one of those
right.
fantasy moments.
No, like that evolution of care is so important. And okay, yeah, I bring up this example of 100 years ago, but even if you look at something the 90s, which is painful to say, 30 years ago, it hurts a little, doesn't it? um, you know, the the understanding of what we would feed our animals was completely different. Because the understandings of what care was acceptable, our understandings of avian lifespan have
Mhm.
changed dramatically. I think a lot of people would have had a set idea of how long certain birds can live then. And now we're realizing that when provided with appropriate care, when you make your decisions based on that animal's welfare, you're going to have an animal that has a significantly longer lifespan than was initially thought. So the field of animal care is constantly evolving, and we're constantly working to change with it in the name of providing the best possible care for our animals.
Absolutely. And I think, the there's with all this information out there, people are getting this information online. Oh, I found it online. I found it on Facebook, whatever. People have to do their research, because if you read something and you're like, I don't know about that, I'm not so sure, I heard a different, information from somebody else. And I think the only way to figure out what's going on is to do research. And I feel like Jack and I are forever telling you guys, do your research, follow up, find out the information, look into it a little bit deeper if you're not comfortable with it. But I think research is kind of the answer to, like, any of these myths, to checking any of these myths, to debunking any of them.
Yeah, and another thing I want to point out, and going back to Jack and Robin's greatest hits, um, for your setup, it really is a study of one. So when you are researching things, when you're wanting to find things for your bird, you're going to find information that works really well for other people, but might not work for your setup. So keep doing that research. Keep finding a plan that is going to work for your individual setup. Because if it doesn't work for you, even if it is, oh, here, this is my friend who breeds birds. This is the best way they can think to do it. Well, I have one companion parrot that lives in my living room. It's a completely different setup.
Yeah,
What you want to provide may be different.
absolutely. All right. So remember that if something doesn't sound right, you're not sure about it, do a little bit of research. So I got one. I'm ready. You ready to get started?
Sure.
So I know this, I have seen this so many times, and I knew, so it must be true, right? Clipped birds can't fly.
Oh, that was a
Okay.
good one.
So that's the first myth I think we need to handle. So I have people telling me all the time, I don't understand it. He was clipped. I don't know how he flew away. So there's a number of things. And we should probably tell you too, Jack and I will not be dragged into a discussion about to clip or not to clip. We've set that line in the sand and we are not crossing it. But the it's a personal choice. And the other thing that we want to put right out there is that every method of clipping is not the same. What are you, right, Jack? I mean, so we want to make that perfectly clear right at the beginning. But they're not able to descend as well. So now you've got this bird that's clipped, ends up in a tree, and he can't get down because he got up there. It may not be that he flew and flew and flew and got up there, but an updraft took him. He landed in a tree, and now he can't get down. Have you experienced that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when we're talking about bird, first of all, these are birds. Birds weigh so much less than a mammal or reptile of the same size. So,
Mhm.
it's not just a matter of, oh, well, the wings were lightly trimmed. It's, you know, they still weigh not anywhere near as much. They can usually get a good amount of lift. Um, and okay, so Robin and I are not going to encourage you guys to clip your birds. One thing that comes up is like the idea of pinioning, which is never done with parrots. That is a permanent solution. That is something that is only done by a veterinarian. Any idea of clipping should be discussed with your veterinarian. But, even if it is a short term, you know, rounding of the wings to limit flight, if you're trimming them a bunch of different ways, how you trim their wings is going to impact how much they can fly, how much control they have over where they're able to fly. It is not going to have an impact on can they fly, because they definitely can do that. I have seen
Right.
birds that have been flipped fly 30 feet in the air, have a fairly controlled flight of 100, 200 feet, and it's not what you would expect to see a normal bird do. It doesn't have the full level of control. They're not, maybe they're not climbing. Maybe it's just a controlled descent down. Maybe they can get that good pop up in the air by working really hard, but because it is a lot more effort, because their wings are clipped, they can't sustain that for very long. Again, it's going to depend on the clip that is involved, but I have never seen a bird that was clipped that could not fly at all.
No, and the other thing about this, the sub myth on this one is the bird that gets out there and is clipped and can't fly, but has no idea how to make its way back. And it's really, it's not to say that this is all good, that's all good. It's really about what, again, we're back to that, what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and how are you going to manage that, and that you need to be responsible. So again, Robin and Jack's greatest hits, you've got to be a responsible bird owner, that you make sure that the windows and doors don't get left open, that when you've got company coming, then maybe the bird's in the cage at that point in time. So it's just thinking about that. So that's a really, really popular one, is clipped birds can't fly. And I just, I hope that everybody knows, and we've got some people saying that they've experienced this themselves. And I think it's really important that, unfortunately, a lot of people have experienced this. So,
I think it's just super important. Because, birds have that ability to fly, which makes them so incredible, so magical, but it also makes it a little bit harder for us to follow. Because we can move forward, back, left, and right, but they have a whole other dimension of movement that we are not capable of. So it's definitely just something to think about. Clipping in general is, for me and Robin, it can be a lightly scary topic, because there are a lot of people that feel very passionately about it one way or the other. And the other thing is, it is not a black and white issue, because there are so many other things that go into wing clipping. Because if you have a bird that is clipped, that clipping can potentially impact its muscle tone. When your bird has a change in its muscle tone and body condition, that can change its hormone levels. It can change its metabolism. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration there. So again, like Robin was saying, use your best judgment, your best information. Do your research, preferably with an avian veterinarian that you trust and are comfortable talking to, on picking a decision that works for your setup.
Yeah, one final thing on clipped birds. They may not, even if your bird is clipped, or if it's not clipped, if it's a free, fully flighted bird, to say my bird doesn't know how to fly, doesn't remember, and never has and never will, again, it's a myth. Because I guarantee you that bird that has never flown doesn't remember how, in the right situation, in a highly stressful situation, that bird's going to remember how to fly, because that's what they do.
Well,
and
I was going to say, Mika, the umbrella cockatoo that we've shown on here before, when I got him, he was already 30 years old. He did not have a history of flying. He liked walking around. He lived at a vet's office. They had built everything in the vet's office so he could go down to the ground, walk up to people, climb up stuff. He was very happy with that. Once I got him, we began working on flight, which was a little bit terrifying for me at the time, because you could see in his body language that he wasn't so sure of himself. And by working with him, by building those muscles, by getting him to make short flights, he can actually do a pretty controlled flight now. And that's after not really flying for the first 30 years of his life. So even if you don't think your bird knows how to fly, um, it may figure it out real quick.
Yeah. All right. So you got a myth for us, Jack?
I have a really, really good one. Um, this is actually applied to a lot of animals, but especially with birds. Um, Old birds can't learn new tricks.
So is this a dig because I'm older than you? I'm just asking. Um, so, so this is, to me, it's a myth and an excuse rolled into one. Oh, my bird's 25 years old. I can't possibly get him to do that. I can't teach him, to turn around. He's never stepped up. I can't do that. There's no age limit. It's all about, so this is one of those myths that I find comes from subpar trainers often enough that it's, well, my old bird, I just can't do that. Well, did you really put the effort in, and did you really, do it right? So as far as I'm concerned, this is a myth and it's been perpetuated because they've heard it before, and they get frustrated with a little bit older bird or a more experienced bird, and then they don't try. What do you think? Well,
Yeah.
you're just talking about Mika.
So I'm light tangent here, but I promise it is connected. For me, I feel like this falls into that category of, there's people who will say, oh, my bird can't learn to do that because it's older. If you're training another animal and they'll say, oh, it can't learn to do that because it's not smart enough. Um, you know, Robin and I have shown you guys, we've done numerous sessions on how to develop a training plan for your animals, how to utilize approximations, how to use a reinforcement history to build behaviors. And that approach is going to be the same no matter what your animal is, no matter what the age of the animal is. So an older bird can most definitely learn things as long as you are set up for teaching it those things. So figure out the behaviors you want to teach. Obviously, you can't teach a bird to do something it's not capable of doing. So you're not going to train your bird to breathe fire on cue. That's not a thing. Um, I know, right? It would be so much more fun if we could. But pick a behavior that your bird is capable of doing, break it down into understandable approximations for that animal, and put the work in. That's going to be the biggest part of training anything, no matter the age, the species. You're going to have to do the work.
Well, and I think too, a great example of this is when someone gets a bird that's been relinquished for whatever reason, and maybe it lived the majority of its life in the cage, or it didn't have a lot of human interaction, and it's, oh no, he's been in this cage, he doesn't interact with people. I can almost guarantee you that if you really put the effort in and build a new reinforcement history, that bird's probably going to respond even better than, a new bird, or a baby bird, because suddenly this bird is getting that kind of interaction, is getting that positive, you're the treat dispenser. You're the one that's bringing the wonderful almonds every day or whatever you choose. But if you build that positive reinforcement history with that bird, it's all the bonding. It's got so much potential. And with an older bird, there may be that really quick learning curve because there's that I'm getting something for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jack?
So that being said, and I agree with you, but I also can't pretend that there aren't times where you get an older bird that has been trained a certain way for so long, and by the bird was exposed to a stimulus, grew to develop a certain response from its human caretakers. I want to clarify it that way because in my mind, I'm thinking of that as training because every single thing that I do with my animals, I think of in terms of training. Robin and I have talked about this. If you just do I'm going to put on my trainer hat and we're going to do this training session only in this 5 minutes of the day and the rest of the day doesn't count, you're not going to be successful. Training is a way to interact with your animals to build that relationship. And whenever people have been interacting with that animal, it may have a training history, even if you're not thinking of it that way. So sometimes you do have to work to push past that, but it's definitely doable. And one of the things Robin and I have talked about, because at this point, Robin and I talk pretty much every single day, getting ready for the live streams and everything else. Working with an animal that was viewed as problematic or stubborn or too old or too aggressive, too difficult to learn. And when you get that animal to, take part in its own care, when you get it to push through on certain behaviors, for me, I mean, there are few greater feelings as an animal trainer than the realization that I have had this positive impact on this animal's life.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about, at the conference, Miguel talked about labels. We talked a lot about labels, and you don't want, and those are all labels. When I was listening to a difficult bird, an aggressive bird, an older bird, all of them are labels. And we get sucked into that, and then we can't get out of it. And so I think that helps perpetuate the myth as well when we're using those labels. And if you look at some of the myths that we're talking about, you'll see that most of them do include a label somewhere. And so that will color how you're handling things. So, all right. So I think we've covered you can teach an old bird new tricks. So myth.
If you need help figuring that out, look back at some of the previous live streams that we have done. Because again, we break down those approximations, that training. It applies to everything.
Absolutely. All right. I got another one.
Okay.
I can fix that for you in 2 training sessions. It'll be I can fix that behavior. I can make it go away. Hello?
Okay.
Right?
I almost feel like that myth should be tied to the myth that birds aren't real, that they're all robots controlled by the government, and periodically they just have to go through and do updates. No. So again, all of these training things are manageable. But again, it's going to depend on the work that you are willing to put in and the effort you are willing to exert. And most of these things are not going to happen overnight. There is a reason why, whenever you guys ask us a question, Robin and I usually have 17 more questions because every situation is different. Every individual bird is different. Every animal trainer is different. So your approach is going to have to be custom tailored for what you're trying to accomplish, the animal you're working with, the situation you're working in, the phase of the moon at the time that you're working on it. I mean, there's a lot of variables that can come into play there. That last one was lightly a joke, but maybe not entirely because birds are more receptive than us. So there's a certain point where I start checking everything to see if it could have an impact. So I am always hesitant to listen to people who will say, no, here's how you do this, and you just do this like this, and then it's just done. No, usually we can ask questions, and then we'll have a plan to start, but you're going to have to then reassess it, and if it's not working, you're going to have to completely change the plan, or at least maybe lightly modify it. But again, there's going to be work to do, and you're going to have to put in the work.
And I mean, there are definitely things that sometimes you have great success with a training plan that you've developed, and you're getting that behavior the way you want it. It's happening, but you've got to maintain it. And there are definitely ways to get behavior quicker than others, but maintaining that behavior is going to take some work. And I feel like the myth out there that, oh, it only takes, a day or, 2 sessions or whatever. Yes, there are times when you can do that, but it's going to go away. That behavior is going to fall apart.
Well, and I have seen, Robin, I'll ask you if you've seen this. I have seen animals trained to do a behavior and they master approximations really, really quickly. And then within 2 days, it all falls apart and the animal has no interest. And as a trainer, it can be frustrating because, wait, 2 days ago, you pretty much had this entire thing down perfectly. And now you don't. Now you're acting as though you're confused by everything I am presenting to you. So is that something you have experienced?
Absolutely. Or you walk into the situation or you walk into the enclosure, however, whether you're protected contact or not, you go into the situation and the animal just looks at you like, I've never seen you before. I have no idea what that thing is in your hand and you're terrifying and I'm out. And it's like, wait, no, yesterday this was what happened. And you've got to think about what's going on. And, we did, excuse me, there are some quick fixes, but those are generally environmental. And it's not, through a training process, it's not through approximations. It's something has gone wrong in an enclosure, or you have come into a situation and, all of a sudden you're all blustery and big hand gestures and what have you in front of your birds. And now suddenly they're responding differently. If you take that back down a notch and you kind of approach more calmly, or you remove the big scary whatever, insert thing here, and the behavior will change, but that's environmental and it will change quickly that way. I mean, have you had that happen, Jack?
Yeah, and so this ties to one of our recommendations to record your training sessions or have a friend, another trainer, observe your training sessions because they may notice something that you are not seeing. Because the other thing is, whenever a training consultant goes somewhere, if there is an issue like that, the trainers that are working with those animals at the time have gotten used to whatever the scary thing is. But somebody brand new to the situation can almost always be like, the bird's focused on that, tree branch that's casting a kind of scary shadow. So let's cut that branch and then there won't be a shadow. And then the situation is fixed. And if you're living in that situation, it can be harder to identify those things. But if you can record your sessions or have somebody else watch your sessions, that can definitely help you with that. And then, of course, you also have another person or the ability to watch the finer aspects of your training session. How is your timing? Are you managing your animal's interest level in the training session? Those are all going to be critically important pieces of information, but there may just be something environmental that's scary or upsetting to your bird.
I had that situation happen one time. I was doing a zoo consult and I was walking through and they were having some issues shifting some bongos, the big hoofstock, off exhibit, and they were refusing to go. And behavior had changed rapidly. They really couldn't determine why that was happening. And I was walking around and, on the outside of the exhibit, and I happened to see there was a kite hanging. It had gotten hung up in a tree right over where they were asking them to shift. Well, if you're a hoofstock, and it doesn't matter how big you are, and something is hanging over your head where you're being asked to walk, probably not going to happen. So it's that different set of eyes, and that's the only time, in my opinion, that you're going to get that quick fix is if it's something environmental or something in your presentation, your approach that needs to be changed.
I mean, that being said, any of the other issues you have, again, they are fixable. There is no such thing as a broken bird. There is no such thing as a bird that is unsavable, unsalvageable, but you're going to have to put the work in. You're going to have to come up with a training plan. You're going to have to work to condition a bird to a completely different environment. I mean, to give you guys an example, I think I've talked about this bird before. I got a relinquished red Lord Amazon who this couple had this bird. It was their son's bird. He went off to college. Because they had dogs, the dogs antagonized the bird. So they kept the bird in a room where it didn't really get any socialization for several years. It got fresh food, it got fresh water, they gave it toys, but because it wasn't used to seeing people, anytime you would go up to this bird, it would lose its mind. Putting food or water in the cage, putting new enrichment in the cage, it would, flail and hurt itself. So in that situation, working with that bird is not, okay, here, I'm going to get you to step up and you're going to do all these trained behaviors. Instead, the training was, okay, I'm going to walk into this room and you are not going to freak out. And I'm going to slowly control how I am doing things. I now have this bird to the point that can change its food, change its water easily, reach into its enclosure to add new enrichment really easily. And this bird, part of it again, probably because it's 9,000 degrees right now, loves interacting with us by getting showers from the mister nozzle from the hose. So we have built a good relationship with this bird that I think a lot of people may have thought wouldn't have even been possible. So it definitely is possible if you're willing to put the work in, but I'm not going to lie and say there's not work to do.
Absolutely. So no quick fixes. So we've debunked another myth. Anybody that tells you they can fix your bird in a quick session, be wary. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So got any others? You got anything to talk about?
Oh, I have a really, really good one. My bird needs a friend.
For what?
Oh, you're going to ask more questions about the situation?
Your bird needs a friend. Oh, that's special. So you're going to go out and buy several, and then you're going to need some more, and they're going to need friends, and so on and so on and so on, and you're going to end up the crazy bird guy.
I think that's what happened actually, but yeah.
So, there you go. That's what happens when you get your bird a friend.
Right. No, for me, that's a really big issue because it seems to tie into the last myth that, oh, if my bird is being aggressive or it's, exhibiting any of these other issues, the quick fix is get the bird a friend. And there are definitely situations where the socialization that other birds provide can be really, really nice, but there are also a lot of considerations to make with that. And I think one of the biggest things to take into account, not all birds are going to like each other. Birds are kind of like us. There are going to be some that are super social. They want to interact with a ton of people. And there are other birds that are like, no, go away. Don't talk to me. Get off my lawn.
It's true. And it's, well, how do I introduce them? How do I make them be friends? When I get a new bird, how do I do that? I don't know. Get in their little bird heads, and it's not possible to make that happen. And so to solve all your problems by your bird needs a friend, he's not getting enough companionship, he's not this, he's not that. Well, then you need to problem solve and figure out ways to fill that time. If you would like to get another bird, that's great. But I feel like this is, again, a myth wrapped in an excuse when people say, oh, I need to get my bird a friend. No, translation, you'd like another bird. And so, go ahead.
And there are times when having multiple birds is if that is what you are trying to accomplish. I have a walkthrough aviary that has, you know, a multitude of budgies and cockatiels. And on my Instagram, I usually will post pictures of me interacting with them, socializing with them. And there is something magical about, okay, 20 budgies are currently sitting on me. I get to live my Snow White fantasy. Now, will y'all go off and please clean all the enclosures? Haven't managed to make that happen yet. Uh, but it's completely different from having a bird in your home. The care, the maintenance, everything that goes into taking care of them is different. So sometimes for people, they'll want to solve a behavioral issue and, oh, let me get my bird a friend. And what they don't realize is that they have opened a box of worms, and you thought you had one issue, now you have 17 that you don't have experience with and can be a little bit trickier. So definitely think about that.
Absolutely. So Jennifer, I'm sorry if I messed up your justification for another bird. So we won't tell anybody's partners or significant others about this. We'll just keep this between all of us. So if you need to use the "my bird needs a friend" on your partner, then that's okay. Yep, the butterflies are flying. But the other thing is sometimes we've got some species mixes that don't always work. There are certain species that probably should not be housed together,
Yeah.
and you've got to take that into consideration. And the other thing is, if you've got two birds, some birds don't know they're birds. It's true, Julie. And if you've got two birds that you're putting together, you've got to think about what's the dynamic. So yes, they're a flock animal, so you are changing the dynamic of the flock by adding another bird. So you need to take into consideration, what's that going to do, with my relationship with the bird? What's that going to do for that bird, taking on another bird? There's so many different things that go into it. But to just say that your bird needs a friend, and again, the thing I hear a lot is, well, they're a flock species, so they need to have multiple birds. You hear that
So
one too?
one of the big things to think about with that is, so I know we get into the, okay, they're birds, and usually for us we're talking about parrots. So it's really easy to think, oh, they're all really really similar, but they can be so incredibly different. There's going to be so much variation between the different species. So when you're thinking about parrots as a flock animal, part of the problem is different parrot species are going to have a completely different understanding of what their flock size should be. Amazons live completely differently from most large cockatoos. A different
Mhm.
understanding of how many birds should be around me and how close to me should they be. So, again, researching your individual species of bird is one of the really good ways to find out that information, because maybe your bird doesn't come from a species that wants to have that huge flock dynamic. And even if you have a bird that does, the species typically likes that huge flock dynamic, you may have the grumbly introvert bird that says, "Get off my lawn. I want to sit here. I want to play with my toys, and I don't want you to look at me."
And and that's the other thing too, is so Forshaw's Parrots of the World. I've mentioned that book before. Joseph Forshaw's Parrots of the World. It lists in there the flock type of every single species. So it's kind of, that's another great reference. It's a way to do some research before you believe these myths that you've got to get a friend. So that's a good one. I think that's important. But
Well, and there's one more thing I wanted to point out with that cross species pairings. Um, a lot of people won't think of this. Birds from different regions of the world are going to have different health concerns. They are going to be susceptible to different parasites. So, I mean, to give you guys an example, I have New World parrots that I don't really have to worry about sarcocystis as much as I have to worry with my cockatoos.
right.
Sarcocystis is a parasitic infection. The lifespan, happens through opossums, which Australia does, but they're different opossums. It's a weird, complicated parasitic life cycle. African greys can be really susceptible to it as well, because it's not something that they have grown and developed with. So when you have birds of different species, they can pick up parasites, they can pick up infections from each other, and they may have a different tolerance for those different things. So try to think about that
Yeah.
just to provide for the best possible health of your bird.
There's a lot that goes into that too. I mean, so all right, so we're never going to hear from you guys again that your bird needs a friend. You can say, I'd like to get a new bird. You can say, I want some more companionship for me. That's fine. But the myth of my bird needs a friend, we're going to throw that one out. So I know one. So my bird is the leader of the flock. He gets up high. He is the dominant creature in my house.
Okay, so I am going to share with you a bit of wisdom that I got when I first started working in the bird department at the Houston Zoo. Um, always, always, always remember that your brain is bigger and you have thumbs. So, yeah, first of all, for anyone who says, yeah, my bird is the leader, my bird is in charge. No. your bird is your bird. It's
Yeah.
it's
You might
bird.
let it be in charge. You might let it be in charge, but there's no, there's no alpha bird. They're not, it's not like wolves. It's not, that pack mentality. A pack and a flock are very different. There is not an alpha bird in a flock. There might be the bird that steals all the food, gets to the food first, and munches out because he's a little chubby bird. But there's not, there's definitely not an alpha. And then the height dominance thing. So people, this is my favorite because people go, oh, that's why I can't let the bird be on my shoulder because it's height dominance and we don't want him to be done. No, the reason you shouldn't have the bird on your shoulder is because I hope you like your vision. You know that, Jack, right? That's why pirates wear patches.
Oh, the parrot took their eye.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean,
I
checks out.
can't believe you didn't know that. So is that bird on your shoulder? Are those birds on our shoulder? No, see, those are a rendition of us, and we would never let that happen. Uh, wow,
Well,
Nick just threw us on the bus. Did you
I,
see that?
he so Robin and I have talked about this before. Um, I do think that there is some level of change in your interaction when your bird is somewhere high. Is it on your shoulder? Is it on your head? But watching multiple people interact with their birds, the way that they are training their birds, I don't. There's nothing to indicate that it's height, and it definitely seems that it is. Your bird is somewhere that is harder for you to reach. So if you're stretching or you can't see what the bird is doing, you can't engage with it. You can't train it. And your bird is going to be aware of that. They are incredibly perceptive. They are prey species. So they have to be hyper vigilant to the world around them, making sure that nothing's going to try to eat them.
And for anybody that has ever gone to a professional bird show, um, the birds are not on people's shoulders, and I say professional because you do sometimes go to those shows where you go, ooh, and there are influencers that we see online all the time with their birds, up around their heads and stuff. And I always go, oh, is today the day that person gets their eye put out? It's not about, it's, people are like, oh no, it's because I'm letting them have power. I'm letting them have control. No, you're letting them get away with nonsense. But the height dominance piece, birds prefer a lot. Most birds prefer that I can see everything. I'm on the top of my cage. I can, survey my domain. And it's really about being able to kind of keep an eye on things. And it's not, I can show you. I mean, well, Julie did say here that her bird knows she can't reach him. And so, yeah, they're pretty smart. They can figure that stuff out. Absolutely. But it's not her bird showing her that he's the boss. He's just like, Nene can't catch me. There's a
Yeah,
difference.
I have seen birds behave the exact same way when they go down to the ground and then climb under, like a chair or a table.
Yeah.
Because again, you're now having to get on the ground, you're having to crawl to reach under to get that bird. They can read that change in your body language. So,
Mhm.
that pretty much throws the idea of height dominance out the window because
Yeah.
they're as low as they can get, but they're still exhibiting those same behaviors. So,
Right.
I think that's just really important to think about. And it is going to depend on your situation. So, we've talked about this. I do presentations with animals for kids. Grayson, that umbrella cockatoo,
Mhm.
he always sits right here. He likes to have a good grip right on my wrist. He is not allowed to climb up. And a major part of that is if he goes up to my shoulder while I am doing a show, I can't watch him while I am also watching a group of kids, while I am also talking to them about the bird. So making
Mhm.
sure that I have the bird somewhere where I can see them, I can respond if he gets spooked by anything. All of these are going to be things that, different plates that are spinning in my head while doing
Mhm.
an animal presentation. So just
Yeah.
think about your setup and your environment.
And I mean, when you think about birds of prey, people who, when I've handled birds of prey, when I've been doing that kind of work, they're never anywhere near anybody's shoulders. And they're pretty powerful and they can be kind of challenging in some cases, but there's not they're not going up anywhere to be dominant. An eagle pretty much knows he can take me out if he wants to, or at least a part of me, but there's no going up high to prove that to me. They're on your arm and that's where they stay perfectly, comfortable. So, all right. So no such thing as height dominance, which is it's another one. I hadn't really realized this until we actually started talking tonight, that a lot of these myths are really excuses.
Yeah,
It's excuses for bad behavior on our part.
right. I think that is what it all comes down to. And that's one of the points that we've tried to drive home. That one, do your research. Your research is going to be the most important thing that sets you up for success.
Yeah.
Any of these situations that we have talked about, you can work through any of these issues that might happen, but it is going to require you to put in the work. And I think that can be one of the things that's really, really frustrating for some people because they want that quick answer, that one thing that's going to, fix everything. And if I had that, I would gladly bottle that up, sell it to everyone, and make millions. But
Right.
the problem is, I have not yet encountered a single. This is what will happen to fix your bird. This is what there is no quick fix. So, sometimes I feel like people can be really frustrated with me when I help them come up with a plan, but say, okay, but now you have to go work your plan.
It's true. It's very true. So I just saw Susan's comment. Susan, we need to expand your horizon. Or we need to get more pirates in your life, I think. That's the problem right there. But that is the extreme, having your eye poked out by a parrot. It definitely is. We don't want to scare people off parrot ownership, but we also don't want them, going around thinking that there's that height dominance piece. So we want to do. I think we had a couple more myths that we wanted to talk about, but we're kind of tight. Well, we could maybe do one more. You want to do
Okay.
one more?
Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I can do this one.
All
Because
right.
this is I encounter all the time, where people will think I need to hand feed my bird so that I can bond with that bird.
Okay, that's a really scary one for me because do you have the skill? Is the first question that comes to mind. Do you know how to hand feed a baby bird? I have to tell you, I was at an event, and I may have told this story before. I don't think on the live stream though. I was at an event and it was a big exotics event. And I was watching some not so reputable people selling a bird to a couple, and the couple had never hand fed before. And they were like, "Oh, so we understand that, if we get the bird this young and we hand feed it, we'll have a much better relationship with it. It'll really help." And the people were like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." Well, yeah, because now you don't have to wean that bird. And he gave them one quick hand feeding lesson, sent them home. And I can almost guarantee you, they were intelligent looking people. I can almost guarantee you that bird probably didn't make it. So the first thing that comes to mind is that, even if you believe that with all your heart, you've got to have the skills.
Yeah, and the skills are they can be challenging to develop, and even if you do something with hand feeding a bird lightly wrong, it can have devastating consequences. You can cause a bird to aspirate formula, get formula into its lungs, and lose that bird uh, almost instantly. The skills that you need to raise a baby bird are significant. Now, I actually did because I raised Widget because I wanted to, and also his parents weren't feeding him, so I didn't really have a choice. I have raised multiple species of parrot and then other birds, and I will say no two species are exactly the same. There's going to be a finesse to every single species. So even if you have fed, like if you have experience feeding a green cheek conure, it's not going to be the same as, oh, I'm going to go get a baby green wing macaw, and I can feed it exactly the same. I mean, the premise is the same, but the skills needed, the amounts, everything is going to be different.
Well, and I think, as far as evidence base, which we try to be here, I think, there are positives to birds that are parent reared. There are positives to birds that are hand fed by the owner. And then there are positives to birds that are weaned and then fed, and then, handed over to the owner. So I think, there isn't any real clear evidence that says that bond will be greater. In your head, it makes sense because, you've taken on that parenting role, but it's really about, Julie says here, definitely a myth. I cannot even count how many birds I have fed out. And I have had my own, both raised by me, wild caught and parent raised different species, but she's bonded with all of them. And I think part of that, when you think about it, there are people who get those birds that have been relinquished that are older. They're not babies. They're definitely not in a position to be hand fed. And people still are able to bond with them and have really great relationships. And I think it's really, again, it's an excuse, an excuse to, I've got to have this bird now and I want to feed it myself. And it's kind of that psychological, emotional piece that happens. And I think people really, really need to consider, they need to do the research and figure out if that's something that should be happening.
Yeah. Now, that being said, I do think developing the skills of knowing how to feed your bird formula is a skill set you should work to develop. At the
Mhm.
Bets conference, we actually had Dr. Clubb talk about this issue. When you have a bird that is, older or not doing well, if you need to ensure that it is getting calories in it quickly, things that are easily digestible, high nutrient, hand feeding formula is a great option to do that. So it's definitely not something that's only going to be limited to baby birds,
Right.
but it is a skill set you have to work to develop. And again, you got to put the work in.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. So that's a bunch of myths. And I think, we've all heard all of them. Yeah, I'm sure all of you have heard those at one point in time. And if you put a little fact, you apply facts to those myths, it'll become pretty obvious pretty quickly to you why they are indeed myths. So, what do you think, Jack? I mean, I think we've covered a a good chunk. I mean, this is definitely, if you guys want to see another one, I guarantee you that Jack and I can come up with, 6 more that we can talk about. So
Well,
just let us know.
any myths you would like to see covered, you can send us a message. You can comment on this live stream because, yeah, we didn't even cover everything that we thought of. Just like with training, we tried to prioritize the things that we see most commonly or would be the most useful. But if there are other things that you would like to see covering, Nick, if there are other issues you would like to see us, I can do this without breaking. I can. If there are other issues you would like to see us cover, just let us know. We would be happy to do a Busting Common Parrot Myths Part 2. Here, hey, Robin, do you want to field Nick's question?
Yeah, we have a question from the Peanut Gallery about, is a hot dog a sandwich? And I have a lot of questions about that, Nick. I can't just answer it straight up without asking you first. So, does the hot dog have cookie butter on it? Is the hot dog, has the hot dog gone through rocket surgery? There are so many questions that need to be answered before I would even try to answer a question like, is a hot dog a sandwich? So, we'll get back to you on that, Nick.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look.
We are, but we do have a trivia question for tonight, and the prize for this evening's trivia question is, I'm not going to tell you till after you answer it. So, what should I do with information I'm not sure of?
Yeah, and I think we've all seen this online where you get a bit of information where it's like that doesn't seem quite right, or that's different from everything else I've heard. So yeah, it's a definite skill to develop here.
Absolutely, and I think we do have a winner. We do. Iris, nice job. Research, research, research. I feel like I need to get a tattoo. I don't know. Maybe not. It would be kind of silly. But so Iris, the prize for this evening is a 1-hour consult with Jack and I. And if you just want to reach out to one of us and we can coordinate, when that would be best to do that. So just get with us and we can make that happen. So great job, Iris. Of course, a hot dog. So Adrian feels that, of course, a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, we'll go with that. That's okay. But wait, Sean says no. I don't know. Oh, the drama. Oh, well.
I feel like
anyhow,
we had more no's than yeses.
I think so too. But Diane wants.
What is it?
I don't know, but Diane wants my tattoo to be a rocket surgeon holding a hot dog with cookie butter on it. Just saying.
Right.
Okay, so we have now digressed ridiculously far afield, but which means that it's probably time to wrap things up. I want to thank you guys again for listening and hanging out with us on Friday nights. We really, really appreciate the dynamic of all the conversation and the back and forth that you guys have in the comment section. And it's really what keeps us doing this is, knowing that you're listening and people are getting things out of it. I've had people make comments that, I tried this and it worked, or I tried that. So, thank you again for being here every Friday night. And next week, we're going to do preparing for and dealing with environmental stressors. So not a quick fix to those environmental stressors, but yeah, there's some of those environmental stressors that are probably going to come up next weekend. So we wanted to talk about that with you guys. Jack, do you have any final words for this evening?
No, again, Robin and I didn't expect this live stream series to become this involved. You guys have made that so incredible for us. And as we are doing our regular preparation for these live streams, we are also going to tell each other when we get notices or messages or pictures of, hey, here's a piece of enrichment we talked about, and somebody did it and took a photo and sent it to us. We love getting those things from you guys. So any of that information, if you want to share that with the Leather Elves page on Facebook, the High Redbird group on Facebook, those will be great places you can share that information. Don't forget, we do a live stream every single Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it live on the Leather Elves Facebook page. And we encourage you guys to do that because it gives you the best ability to directly interact with us, to ask us questions. But of course, if you miss one of the sessions, you can always watch it as a video on the High Redbird YouTube channel. They're all part of a playlist. So you can watch everything start to finish. And at this point, we're actually referencing some of the sessions we've done in the past. So that would be a good place to check that out. But again, we are trying to put together information that you guys have asked for, the things you like to see. So just let us know the kind of content you would like to see. And we would be happy to put that together.
All right. Well, you guys take care. Have a wonderful week. And we will hopefully see you next Friday. And, we're going to talk about some ways to deal with things. But again, no quick fixes. So it's just something that, you need to think about. So everybody take care and have a wonderful week.